I'm telling you.
Call the City of Kewaunee Common Council meeting to order for Monday, June 12th. Let the record show all members are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. All right. Item 3, approval of May 8th, 2023 Common Council minutes and June 1, 2023 Special Common Council meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve those. 1 second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 4, public comment communications. There'll be 3-minute time limit per person. If anyone would like to speak under public comment, please step forward to the podium and state your name and your address.
Good evening, Dan Stengel with Stengel Development Group, 1506 Lincoln Street. I am here in reference to 8 Echo, I believe is the item, 1315 Ellis for Morgan and Colleen Bolts. Available for any questions you guys might have. I know sometimes it's in the packet, there's some information there, but Morgan and Colleen weren't able to make it tonight. I did fill out and help them with all the paperwork for submitting for the CSM for the split of the lot. So when you get to that point, I'm available for questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak under public comment this evening? Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comment this evening? Public comment will be closed. Item 5, boards, commissions, committee and staff reports. Personnel Committee, Public Property Committee, Plan Commission, Public Works Committee, Finance Committee, and staff reports.
I would move to pass these. I would like to make a comment about the Finance Committee.
Okay, we have a motion.
1 second.
What was that, Robin?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead with your discussion, please.
I just wanted to make it clear that the Finance Committee did not discuss the financials in this packet. We did not discuss the financials in the Finance Committee packet because I concluded that they were materially incorrect. We recommended to move to council the corrected financial reports that Joanne provided us for that meeting. The financials in this packet are identical to the Financial Committee incorrect financials. So I just wanted to be clear that we did not approve or recommend to move to council the financials. They were reviewed and we requested that the amended financials be put into the packet.
The problem with having the amended financials put in is because that was not what was on the agenda for the finance to approve.
Okay.
And there was only an issue with a couple of revenues that were submitted into the wrong, they were allocated to the wrong account. So what I did on that day, I talked with Wendy, I met with her, I printed off a report that was dated June 6th to show that I had made the corrections.
Okay.
And that's what that's what she presented to them, but they, technically couldn't approve them because they were not a part of the finance agenda.
Okay.
So I forwarded what was a part of the finance agenda to the council.
Michelle?
And I would just say that we still have a problem that the financials in this packet are materially wrong in that revenue section.
Again, our financials, okay, I'm giving you a budget comparison report. That is an ongoing workable report. There's going to be times where things are going to get allocated incorrectly. I'm going to fix them. Sometimes they're going to get fixed after you see them. So for you guys to be approving a report that is a working document, it's going to change. So really your financials should not be approved. They should be reviewed and accepted because they can change with things being, over time.
My issue that these were February, March, April all of them were incorrect. So,
Because I
and I
made the
think that,
correction.
and my issue is like, you knew they were incorrect.
I made the correction in May because I was, trying to get those, those done each month. You were,
I have a hard time seeing very wrong numbers in the packet that's put out to the public as well.
I'm wondering if I can just add a comment down here. I'm wondering if the report is incorrect and we see that when it's given to us. And I guess I'm wondering if Joanne then corrects a wrong entry, are we not supposed to approve that simply because the entry was wrong? And we say to Joanne, okay, well, this line item number 36 or whatever it is, that entry is wrong. But she says she's going to correct it at the next meeting. Get it correct for the next report. I guess I'm failing to see what the problem would be in accepting a report that we see there's a wrong entry and she's going to correct the entry. Do you understand what I mean? If the entry is wrong, if we get the report now and this entry is wrong, the entry is wrong.
And it's identified at this
And
meeting.
it's identified at this meeting, why wouldn't we give her the opportunity then to correct it for the next meeting?
Next financial meeting or
Well,
the next
finance,
council
well,
meeting?
sure, the next finance meeting, it's gonna come up in front of finance again in the next month. I understand what Wendy's saying, though, I really do, but I'm saying, if it's incorrect, you have to give her time to correct it, I'm just,
We got, in the finance meeting, we got the corrected things. We got a corrected report.
okay,
So I was anticipating that this corrected report would go into the packet as the
Oh, I
thing
see
that
what you're saying.
the finance committee recommended to move forward.
Procedurally, what Joanne's saying, if I may
Okay.
speak on that, is it's because whatever the timeline of those items was not on the agenda for that finance meeting. Is that what you were saying?
correct.
So
What transpired was, I met with Wendy earlier that day. And she brought up her concerns about those line items that were incorrect. So I said, well, I've already corrected them. So I went into the office, I printed that report to show her that I corrected them. She said, oh, good, can we have these to show to the council tonight or to the committee tonight? I said, yeah, go ahead. So we made copies and that's what she presented to them. I thought she was just going to show them that, yes, these are incorrect, but they've been corrected since that time.
So I think that we can all understand that under these reports, that the corrections have been made, have been noted. And what's in your packet is the not corrected version of those reports.
How does that become noted though? I mean, I understand what you're saying completely, but if we saw that it was incorrect, at what point does it come to the council as being without her saying it was incorrect? Or you just don't think it needs to be? I guess I'm confused on that part.
I mean, all it was, okay, so we had money that came in and it got allocated to the wrong line item. And it got corrected. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's, I mean, that's the whole purpose of their reviewing of these reports is so that they look at them and then when they see something that doesn't look right, they're my double, they're my second set of eyes. So if something is wrong and I didn't catch it, they're catching it and then I go back and change it.
This is a very big, personal property tax aid for $644,883. I don't know how anyone couldn't notice that. And then it's just right. It should be around $7,000 and it's $644,883. That's a material misstatement.
Well, it was incorrectly entered. It was caught, and like Joanne said, there's a reason we have a finance committee, is partly to be a second set of eyes. It's been noted, it's been corrected, and going forward, everyone's striving for perfection here, and we're working there. Short of stating that in the minutes that the reports that are in the council packet are incorrect, the corrected amount will be reflected in next month's packet. I don't know what more you'd like to see.
That seems like it should be noted that it was correct.
What I'd really like to see is correct financials. That's what I would really like to see. And that's been not forthcoming.
All right, do we have any other discussion on the item 5?
I just have one question for Heath. At the last Public Works meeting, we talked about the Scott Street extension, and you sent a letter to the property owners. Have they responded back to you at all?
I got a phone message from the owners of the nursing home, the property on the north side.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to schedule a meeting with them to go over what their intentions were
okay,
and see if it has anything to do with Scott Street, because they already have access to
okay.
another street. Whether or not they need to have access to another street south of them is unknown at this point, but they.
So they are willing to sit down and,
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
great.
willing to discuss what their intentions are.
okay,
I could find out whether that relates to Scott Street in any material way.
okay, but
The other ones did not respond as
did
far as
not respond.
I have
Did
not.
we give them a timeline
We leave them until the end of last month.
until the end of last month, till the end of May?
Yeah.
Okay,
I have not heard back from them, but I
Okay.
did hear from them.
Which nursing home? So I have a visual on where you're talking.
The Kewaunee Care Center.
Oh, we have, I guess they're all CPRS, but to be clear.
And I don't want to waste any more time on this, but in all transparency, like Wendy's question is, when we'll be able to present to the public the correct financials? Yes,
Well, I don't understand what you guys mean by correct.
I don't know.
Again, the budget.
And when you're saying that they're not right numbers,
When you have a budget comparison report, okay, it's an ongoing document, so it's gonna change every month, because as we take in money, as we pay out money, that changes. So there could be mistakes because, you know, you allocate it to the wrong account. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong financials.
Okay.
It just means that the money was taken, you know, out of the wrong line item.
Okay.
So it's not like we're, you know, like we're not taking in the right amount of money, or it's not meaning that we're paying out the wrong kind of money. It just means that somebody made a mistake and it got put to the wrong account, and then we have to correct it. You know, I mean, it's simple errors that people make. You know, we're not hiding anything.
This is partially because your budget is overly complicated. You have so many line items in that budget, it's absurd. And some of them are more or less repeats. So from our perspective, it's also
Kewaunee specifically,
our specific budget, the way the line items are run, you could more or less eliminate several of them or consolidate them into specific categories and simplify the process tremendously for her staff. Because sometimes just trying to figure out where to put one is inordinately complicated, because it becomes an interpretation of how that's supposed to play out.
and what can we do as a council to streamline that, I guess, then?
Well, part of our process going forward is going to be to present a budget that actually makes some sense to us, because we inherited this thing from others who had been continuing this process for years, and it probably made some internalized sense to them, but for us, it just seems inordinately complicated and too many line items all over the place.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I think you guys should make a recommendation to the finance committee on how do you like to simplify it. I also think that, I assume the grand total was fine, it was just the wrong line item. The process is working, it was caught in the finance. We should be happy that the new committees are doing what they're supposed to do and catch it.
absolutely.
So I think that's good.
The other side of that is kind of what you you're tipping on. The budget that the council approves is a summary budget. So you are, you know, we have categories. So you have public service, you have public works, you have general, you have recreation and culture. Okay, those are the categories that you guys are approving. What I'm giving you when I do a budget comparison is a line item budget, okay? So you're seeing all the detail. So what, you know, I'm giving you the detail because that's, you know, I mean, so you can see where we're working and what we're doing. The budget summary is where you really want to be concerned, because that's the bottom line. If that is off, that's where the problem is. Okay, so if we don't have enough revenue, it's kind of like what Jim was saying. If the bottom line is showing that, you know, we didn't take in enough revenue for that category, or we overexpended on that category, then we have a problem. Then it's wrong, or if there's an error, it could be wrong.
Nope, with Heath's explanation of what Jim had said, the system's working and it sounds like we need to make some changes in what we need, how we do it.
And I think the streamlining and whatnot, we can work that through finance and staff to try to get that to something that's gonna be better manageable and more user friendly. And I think part of the new computer program, that's supposed to simplify and aid in that as well. So again, it's steps, right? We're making steps in the right direction. Sometimes they're not as big a steps as we'd like to see. But I feel that we are going in the right direction with that, so. And I appreciate the finance committee's work on that as well.
I
So,
think a lot has to
continuing
do
on.
with where some of us are newer too, so there's a lot of questions, and when you start getting into the details of the budget and other reports, you're picking it apart to some degree for your own knowledge and learning,
It's gonna be
so
much better in your next term.
and going forward.
That'd be right.
I guess my concern is the budget is coming. It would be just nice to have accurate things for people to, because all the department heads are gonna have to be using that document to.
It is critical to understand the departments, where they're at year to date, month to date. And you know, a lot of these, well, these reports are gonna be as a snapshot in time, right? That's what it is at that moment. And if you're already gonna be, you're always gonna be like a month or whatever
That's.
behind, and we all understand
These are
that,
from April.
right? So we'll continue to work on that. So we do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6, mayor's report. So I had the privilege and honor to hand out some awards to Scott Wiley, Jim Lamack, and Casey Rohr, who were selected by Rotary as their People of the Year. And along with the recognition they got from Rotary, I gave each of them a key to the city. They've been working for, I don't know how many years with the school district, 3 years with the school district in supplemental meals and preparing that for the children. And it's been, I forget the numbers on what they were saying on how many they started with and how many they're up to now, but
I think that they're at 90 right now.
90, that's what I was thinking. So it's just become invaluable for these kids to getting the nutrition that they need, that they otherwise would not have.
And we've had a tremendous amount of community support and donations, Lions Club. A lot of people have contributed.
I mean, it really, the recognition sometimes seems small and many people shrug it off. I don't need the recognition. I just show up, I do what I need to do. And that's the way the people of Kewaunee really are. They see something, they acknowledge it, and they get involved and they help out. And it's so many different ways. And the Kewaunee Wall of Fame, there's another example of that, and just many different ways. So I just like to make that shout out to those folks and those that came before them. So all right, so that's all I have on our mayor's report. Item 7, is there any unfinished business? There's no unfinished business, and we'll move on to item 8, new business. 8A, presentation by Justin Hoagland of Baker Tilly and approval of 2022 financial audit. Justin. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Justin Hoagland. I'm senior manager at Baker Tilly, and I'm one of our external auditors. And so we did issue your December 31st, 2022 reports back, I believe, April 20th. And so after we issue those reports, we always like to kind of come and talk to the council and go over them briefly. We have some financial highlights we like to go over, and then just see if you have any questions for me. So first reports I want to talk about are they're called TIP compilations. And so Joanne should have a copy if you want to look at it, but they're pretty small. You have 2 TIFs here, tax experimental financing districts, right? TIF 2 and TIF 3. And so these are pretty much mini financials that just cover the TIFs themselves, nothing else from the city. And so we prepare these reports because then there is DOR reporting that's due every year in early July. And so then Joanne is then able to take these reports and enter the information into the DOR website, to complete that annual reporting. And so just to briefly go over these reports, they're pretty simple, but, on, like page 2 of the report, it's a balance sheet, right? It shows the assets, the liabilities, and that fund balance, or equity that most people know it as, it's kind of built up over the years. The last 2 pages, if I'm looking at tip 2, if you're looking for like an income statement, that's going to be more of your income statement. It's a historical summary of the TIF. So it kind of shows it from 1994 when the TIF started up until 2022. It shows here's all the revenues we've taken in, here's all the expenses that we've taken in. And so I specifically want to talk about TIF 2. At the end of 2022, TIF 2 had $27,354 of fund balance currently sitting in it. And I know back in June, in early June, there was a resolution passed to terminate the TIF because it's coming to the end of its useful life. And so I believe it's my understanding, Joanne can correct me, but I think you're going to be collecting one more year of increment, but I don't know if the DOR
Well,
will confirm that.
Yeah, we're waiting for that confirmation. So, because Baird said that we wouldn't be collecting 2024.
Okay,
And so he went back to the Department of Revenue to get that clarification. I haven't
Okay.
heard back.
gotcha. Well, we'll wait on that, but for now, I'm gonna assume you're gonna collect one more based on what I've seen, but if that's not accurate, we'll go down the road. But so you're gonna maybe collect one more year's of tax increment in that TIF. I think it's about 180,000. Yeah, it's the 2023 levy, but most of it's collected in 2024. And so once the TIF closes, you're required per Wisconsin statutes to have a dissolution audit done. And so we'll do the dissolution audit. It'll be dated as of August 31st, 2024. We do that because that kind of goes in line with the final settlement with the county as far as taxes. And then, so we got all the final numbers for the TIF, and whatever's left over in the TIF then gets distributed between the overlying taxing jurisdictions. So the city's gonna get a piece, county's gonna get a piece, school district, et cetera. And so I'm guessing the city will get about between 50 and 100,000.
Is it equal distribution?
It is not, it's based off kind of the tax rates.
Okay.
So we'll do a kind of calculation that.
Okay.
So however much you would normally get of the normal tax, property taxes, that's kind of what percentage you'll get of what's ever left over in the TIF. But it'll probably be, if you collect one more year of tax increment, it'll probably be between 50 and 100,000. It's just a rough estimate. And that'll go, I've always seen it go to the general fund. So again, you will get a nice boost to the general fund for 1 year in 2024 from this money coming over once the TIF is closed. Any questions specifically on TIF compilation reports or TIFs in general?
I just have one question for TIF 3. How much? I know it's delayed by a year. How much? We have no revenue in the TIF fund right now. Next
Correct.
year. How is that looking for next year?
I think it's like 3,000 something. Yeah, so it'll show up as a receivable in 2022. So you have, like, if I looked on page 2 of the TIF 3 report, there's taxes receivable of $3,353. So that'll be recognized as revenue in 2023. Ideally, the normal life of a TIF is it starts off, you're not getting any revenue, but once you start having growth in that TIF, usually you spend a lot of money to get it going, whether it's giving developer incentives, putting in infrastructure, businesses, people come in, increase the tax base of the TIF, and it keeps collecting more and more money then every year is the goal of the TIF. And once it closes, you're then left with hopefully a more developed property. And all that increase in taxes then gets distributed between, again, all the overlying taxing jurisdictions.
And that revenue is determined, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue says the municipality funds development through increases to the property values in the TID. The taxes on the TID value increment, the difference between the TID's current value and the TID's base value results in additional funds. So we have all these homes within the TID and all of their incremental increase in tax beyond the base goes into the TID.
Exactly, yep. All of it
It's
does.
only $3,000 this year.
Correct. I think when I looked at the DOR, the DOR calculates what the increment is. And so for 2022, The increment value was like 150 something thousand. And so
The increment value, so that's the
how much
total
it
taxes,
over base was, once this TIF was created, the base was frozen.
correct?
And so, in the first year or two of the life of the TIF, there's been 150,000 of additional tax increment.
Okay,
And then of those taxes, there's about 3,000 that actually comes from it. It's just like your house, if it was 150,000, you pay $3,000 of taxes on it.
okay.
Oh, that's.
Okay, so the assessed value is 150,000 from taxes,
Correct,
okay,
yes.
but all the, but the base. And whatever the incremental increases, that goes into that,
Yeah, whatever the increment is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else with the TIF report? So. Let's see, the next report that I want to go over. Is this reporting and insights document. And so it has a bunch of different stuff in it. It describes what our requirements are as your auditor. It has some other required communications that we need to give those charged with governance, the council. Any material entries that we found as part of the audit. As well as just other recommendations that we have. And also on pages 6 and 7, we also list any internal control deficiencies that we found as part of the audit. So again, those are found on pages 6 and 7. I think there's about 15 or so points that we have on there. You'll notice that some of them after the point, it says segregation of duties. And so those ones are really, there's an issue because there's only 2 people in the accounting department. You can only have such good controls with that limited amount of people. And so there's a couple that say segregation of duties. Those will be hard to clear. I'm not saying they're impossible to get rid of them at one point, but harder to clear with a limited staff. The remaining ones definitely can be cleared by the city. I'm more than happy to have, a meeting with whether it's Heath, Joanne, whoever, to kind of go over, here's what I would do if you want to clear this point. Again, I will caveat that with a lot of those points are common for municipalities your size. Again, where we'd rather have our employees working on this versus trying to just clear all these internal control points. So again, up to the city, if you'd like to kind of go on the path of trying to clear some of them, again, I'm more than happy to have those conversations. Is any questions on that reporting and insights document? And so kind of the last document I want to go over, hopefully you all have a copy, is this financial highlights document. It has a bunch of graphs and stuff in it. This is just going to give some high level financial results based off the financial statements. So if you turn to page 1 of the financials, a good place to look when you're trying to assess the financial health of a municipality is the general fund, right? This is where most of the day-to-day transactions run through for the city. And so this bar chart at the top kind of shows what your fund balance levels are at the end of 2022.
Where are you?
Looks like this, like a bar chart at the top.
Oh, right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
24 of the.
Yeah. No, I got it.
say page 1 of this document. Yeah.
It's in the package.
And so, again, when assessing the financial health, I like to look at the fund balance of the general fund. Again, as most people call it, the equity that's built up over the years. And so the black line is your 2021 balances. The blue line is 2022. And so there's different buckets of fund balance that it kind of gets categorized into. At the bottom of this bar chart, you'll see there's $44,000 of non-spendable fund balance. That's mostly made up of stuff like advances. So the general fund has advanced money to other funds for various reasons. It's not expecting to get it paid back within a year. So that's why it's considered non-spendable. Above that, you'll see there's $133,000 of assigned fund balance. So assigned fund balance is usually different, projects and stuff like that, that the council has said, hey, we're going to use this money for this. And so it's been assigned. Again, the council can always unassign stuff if they choose. And so there There is more detail of these, of exactly what makes up these numbers in page 39 of the financials, if you wanted to look at that. And so lastly, the line above that's the unassigned fund balance rate. This is what's left over and can be used or not used at the discretion of the city. The last point I wanted to make on page 1 here is in the middle, we have a summarized income statement for the general fund. And you will see there was an $82,722 net income in the general fund. That's compared to a balanced budget. So the city did better than budgeted in the general fund by about $83,000. That's always good to see. So going on to the next page, page 2. This chart again focuses around the general fund. And so there's a ratio we like to calculate. It's essentially taking that unrestricted fund balance that we just talked about. We divide it by what your normal expenditures are for the year, and it comes out with a percentage. And so you'll see for 2022, Kewaunee percentage, which is the orange. Just noticing maybe now you don't have colored, or some of you have colored sheets.
No, they got it.
The bottom one that has the dots connected is Kewaunee's percentage calculation over the last 5 years. So at the end, 2022 is 13.4%. That's essentially saying that you can, if you didn't take in any more revenues, you can kind of survive and pay your normal bills for about 1.5 months. And so the blue dots above are the average for cities your size in Wisconsin. And so you are below what other cities are at. They have more, essentially, that means they have more reserves than you do on average compared to how much you're planning to spend. You will notice though, over the last 5 years, right, that's been steadily increasing because the city's done a really good job as far as having doing better than budget over the last 5+ years. Again, it's pretty hard to get out of a hole, but the city's been doing a good job incrementally increasing that percentage every year. So again, that's good to see.
Best way to remediate this, just fiscal responsibility of what?
Yeah, just trying to, not going over budget, right? Checking your budget to actual reports like you guys were talking about, making sure you're not going over on certain line items. The other way is that I have some clients who, if they're in a hole, they want to get out, they'll budget for, like a fund balance improvement line where they'll say, hey, we're gonna budget this for $50,000 and we don't want to touch this. And if we have a balanced budget and we don't touch that, we're gonna be $50,000 above like budget because we're not using that kind of fund balance.
And you could make a case that we don't have as much money on hand, if you will, but yet if our debt ratio is down, which we'll be talking about later on, that our borrowing capacity is still strong and healthy. So you could always borrow funds that we'll talk about later as well.
Yep.
So
Yep, we do have a couple of graphs about debt. It's probably the next one, actually. So if you move on to page 3, like Jeff said, this is going to relate to debt and kind of talking about your debt capacity or your borrowing ability. And so, per state statutes, you're allowed to take out up to 5% of the city's equalized value in general obligation debt. And so the black line at the top of this chart, which kind of shows your what that 5% calculation is over the last 5 years. The orange line or the bottom line kind of shows where your actual geo debt is at, again, over those last 5 years. So you want to get as much distance between those two lines as possible. At the end of 2022, you've essentially used up about 39% of your debt capacity. Again, I would say that's pretty typical for municipalities your size. So you do have kind of capacity to borrow more, like the mayor said. Going on to the next page. So again, this graph focuses around debt. And so another ratio we like to calculate is we take what your debt service payments are. We divide that by your total kind of non-capital expenditures. So essentially this is saying what percent of your normal routine expenditures do you have to devote to debt service, right? Because if you have to pay debt service, then you're not buying, a truck or anything else like that. So at the end of 2022, about 11.7% of, again, those normal kind of routine expenses had to go to pay debt service. And so, again, for those that don't have it in color, it's the connecting lines are the city of Kewaunee. The black dots are, again, other municipalities your size in Wisconsin. And so you're pretty much in line with the average for other municipalities. The one thing I do want to point out is you see that large kind of up down triangle there. So last year in 2021, you refunded debt. And so essentially you took, like refunding your house or refinancing your house, right? You had old debt, you replaced it with new debt at a better interest rate. But so how we have to account for that though in 2021 is we have to count it like you're paying it all off, right? And so you essentially have this big expense of principal going out that you're paying off, but you have revenue coming in of new debt. So the net income impact is zero. But we, as far as accounting standards, have to show that as being principal paid off. So that's why it's what I would say artificially high last year, is that it looks like you paid, had a huge percentage, 37% of your expenses went to debt, but it's just because of that refunding. So again, nothing to worry about with that kind of, high peak there. So going on to the next page. So now we're going to get more into the utilities. So this first page is all around the water utility. And again, the graph at the top kind of shows in orange, or the top line is the operating revenue. The bottom line is your operating expense. Again, you kind of want to make sure you have enough space between those two lines. I want to point out that the operating, this doesn't factor in your non-operating expenses essentially. And so those are things such as the interest you pay on your debt. The water utility also pays over a pilot to the general fund, which is a payment in lieu of tax every year. Those are not factored into the operating expenses that you see above. Once you factor those in, the total net income for the water utility was about $7,000. So again, it did have a net income, which is good. That's what you want to see, because these should be self-sufficient funds, right? You shouldn't be going with holes every year. If you are, that means you should be looking at water and our sewer rate studies to figure out what kind of increases should we have, so that we're not running into a hole with these. Under that operating results, there's this unrestricted reserves. Again, similar to other ratio that I calculated, we want to kind of see how many months of cash on hand you have to kind of pay your bills from your unrestricted reserves. So for 2022, you had almost 10 months of cash on hand, again, to pay those bills. So that's very healthy. Under that is your debt coverage. So essentially, for your water and for your sewer, there's certain debt covenants that you have with some of the revenue bonds that you have outstanding that says, hey, there's essentially a calculation, it's in the financials. It's essentially want to make sure that you can cover your future debt service payments next year. So it's kind of saying, hey, we want to make sure you're going to have at least 1.25 times what you're going to pay us in income, so that we know that you're going to be able to pay this, just in case, an unexpected expense comes up or whatever. So the minimum's at 1.25, you're actually at 3.77. So well above kind of those debt covenants, like you have been for the last 5+ years. The last piece is investment in capital. It kind of says, okay, of all the capital in the water fund, how much is financed through debt versus how much is kind of owned by the city, right, that you paid off. And so there is a very high percentage of it that's financed by debt. It's 96% is debt that you'll have to pay off that's not owned by the city. So that is a very high percentage. Again, it just kind of attributes to how your debt's very long in nature. And so it's kind of getting paid off just the same rate as your depreciation that's getting charged on those assets.
Anything to be done? I know that we've had the same report since I've been here, so.
Yeah, it's been pretty high historically, again, unless you refinance and paid off debt early. I wouldn't do that just to make this graph look better. But that's really the only way to kind of increase it. Going on to page 6. This is very similar setup to the last one, but this relates to your sewer utility. Again, you can kind of see the operating revenues versus operating expenses. There was a large net income in the sewer utility this year. Again, it's good to see, you know, when I see that loss is when you want to really start looking at, do we need to increase rates? Again, looking at the unrestricted reserves, 6.4 months on hand, again, that's healthy. And you easily meet your debt coverage, 2.56 compared to the 1.1 that's required. Here again, the investment in capital looked a lot better. This is more normal, but we'll see 57% debt, 43% equity. So again, that's in much better shape. That's what I had for the utilities. You know, the one other thing that I wanted to mention when I was looking at the financials is the Marina Fund. So that fund did have about $115,000 loss in 2022. Again, that's just encourage everyone to monitor that, you know, those budget actual reports monitoring where that's sitting, because you can't have that $115,000 loss every year. I think there was 100 something, maybe like 170,000 of equity left in that fund after in 2022. So if you have another $115,000 loss, you're pretty slim there. And you know, if you start to run out of money in the Marina Fund, that's going to have to come from the general fund or something like that. So again,
There was some preventative maintenance issues that were taken care of and some damage that was replaced, or fixed, so there were some unforeseen.
yeah, so hopefully at one time,
Right.
that's I think of some dock repairs and stuff like that. So hopefully those are more just one time expenses, but again, I just wanted to mention it. Any questions for me? Those are the main things I wanted to highlight.
Any questions on the finance report? Audit? All right, then we should be able to move on to item B.
Thank you. Thank you. And my contact information is in the reporting on the sites document if you ever have any, you know, questions or whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. 8B, recommendation from finance regarding borrowing $1 million in general obligation promissory notes to fund capital improvements. Who's gonna lead the charge on that?
We had a discussion with Justin Fisher at Baird. We had a presentation. We're looking into trying to find a way to help finance some of our capital improvement issues. This is one of the proposals that they brought to us, and the reason for doing this is because we have room under our debt, as Justin Hoagland just commented on. This is a program where we would borrow $1 million in a general obligation promissory sale every other year. And the objective would be to build it into your debt portfolio. So as you're paying down the debt every year, you're still pulling money out under your debt limit. And use that to help pay for some of the improvements we have to do. It's a opportunity that's provided to us under state law, and it also allows us to be able to fund these improvements at a relatively controlled pace. Baird's recommendation was this is a fairly conservative number. We're not asking for going all the way up to the debt limit. We're asking for $1 million, as I mentioned, every other year. So it's an average of $500,000 every year that would go toward capital improvements. The only issue that we have to do on our end is Baird can do the financial part of it. Our side will be coming up with a list of improvements that we can fit in there on an annualized basis, so we can start to move forward. This first step would be coming up with stuff that we can do immediately with that money, with the funding that we'd be getting, and or putting it aside, setting it aside for other capital expenditures we anticipate coming in. Either equipment replacement or other types of things. The other piece is the thing that comes up right after this, which is the creation of a capital improvement plan, which actually reflects actual capital improvements as opposed to the current document we have. So that would be the way that would be the CIP, when it's created and adopted, would actually be the driving document for these capital improvements going forward. Would be take out $1 million and use it toward these projects that we have in the CIP. And in the immediate term, we're gonna come up with a list ourselves that reflects things that are most immediate need or things that we can do right now, that we can use the money for. And the objective of, as I said, is to create a sustainable funding mechanism that's not overdrawing our debt. And it's based on a revenue increase of only 2%, which is historical. It's not. We have a generalized annualized assessed growth rate in the levy of 2% every year. And that's built into this assumption, so that it's assuming that we're not gonna all of a sudden take a huge hit, take a drop somewhere. We're gonna really go up at that relatively small pace. So.
So again, this is, I think it's gonna be a very effective funding tool. The next item we're gonna be talking about is gonna be the creation of a capital fund improvement and revising that. Having these projects, that's gonna be group effort. The department heads are gonna have some of the things they want, and then ultimately the council's gonna decide on the improvements and a schedule. This $1 million borrowing, again, they use real numbers of 2% growth. And you know, in your packet, it shows the schedule of paying back and whatnot. That's realistic numbers, not built up numbers that makes it look like it's gonna flow itself. If the idea is every other year to borrow new money, that's gonna come up at that time for this council to determine, you know, hey, this is working well, we're gonna continue to do it. We're working towards completion of our capital improvement plan. Or hey, let's pull back, some things have changed and maybe now isn't a good year, we borrow less. You know, we may borrow less on a given year, but with the levy and the growth of the levy of the 2%, I think it's gonna be a very effective means for us to get some things done that there's no other way we're gonna be able to get it done. So.
I think we discussed it, which would have been nice if they'd be here, but our biggest concern, of course, was the risk. What was the risk? And it would be not having really good planning. If we have really great planning, then that reduces our risk because those monies are channeled. Also, Justin had said basically for the size of our community, that's how they determined the $1 million, because they had smaller communities maybe went for 750,000, larger went for, you know, a little more, maybe $1,025,000. But so that was what they felt was most appropriate for us. Also, that maybe one year we might do 250,000, and then the next year we might do the 750. So it would fluctuate between the, you know, two.
Yeah, there's just nothing in stone that we
Right.
have to do. But I think taking this initial step in working through it and understanding, it's my understanding, Heath, that we would have like a CIP account then, that this money would be designated to. So all the transactions for the projects would be coming from that account, and the council's gonna see full transparency and control over those expenditures out of that account.
Yes. Most of those expenditures would have to come through here for approval in any case, because they're all.
Exceed the
Under the
cost.
purchasing policy, we would have to bring them before you anyway. So the council would have full reference to dealing with whatever gets spent. And the objective here is not just to create it's to create a fund balance from which we can use to actually get things going. And then as we work through those things, we figure out what's appropriate going forward.
So this isn't like, okay, well, tomorrow or next week, we're gonna go out and borrow $1 million. This is gonna be. What you're asking actually, Mr. Mayor, is approval to borrow up to $1 million for certain projects is what you're saying.
So the CIP is gonna get developed. We're gonna have that item on here that we are gonna have a recommendation to hire Robert Baird and Company to help facilitate that CIP. But the timeline in the packet from Baird is that the council will look for a resolution, and that the funds would become available in September of this year.
$1 million?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's amortized over how many years?
And correct.
Mhm.
And that payback is in here based on the 2% growth.
Based on 2% growth.
Do we have a sense of what the fees are for this? That's something that we didn't really talk about in the.
Closing fees, you mean, or the administration fee?
The fees that we'd be paying to Barrett.
It comes out of the promissory note, whatever it is that we have to pay them.
Right.
Do we have a sense of what that might be? No, that's for the CIP.
Basically $100,000 a year over 10 years is what you're saying.
Well, they've got the schedule actually broken out. It's not 100 and.
Yeah.
Eric, did you have a question? No, I was just wondering what page that was. Oh, sorry.
I'm wondering, no, that's for this one. This is, that's all this premium. I'm wondering, yeah, that's, where do you see that?
Page 30.
Oh, page, yeah.
Sorry, I was helping Eric out.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm wondering if that's, yeah, that seems awfully high though.
Yeah.
What percent interest?
They had it factored at 4.25, yeah, so that,
But wasn't he saying he was hoping to get it lower?
Yeah, because I wrote down on the top, but it's in your, I don't know, it was 4% was at full current.
And I remember he said he was hoping they could maybe get it under 4.
right. I don't have that number.
Well,
I mean, it shows that 47,000 on the fee schedule, on the payment schedule as a hypothetical bid premium. On page 3. So at the end of the day, that would show on the bottom line with the interest and that fee would be 1.264 million. At the end of the term. And that's based on 4.25%. So if we can even get a quarter knocked off, that's a lot of money.
I guess I'm questioning whether we can pay back $147,000 3 years from now.
Well, based on the formulation of historical growth of 2%, they're saying yes.
What do we do with Dodge Street?
Well, that would be, that money could be used towards Dodge
That's,
Street.
this is the catalyst to help fund these projects.
And what about the?
Same thing.
Maybe you should talk about where the payments for this is gonna come from. It's not coming out of the actual general fund, it's coming out of the.
Well, I mean, it comes out of it's your debt.
But it's coming out of general obligation. So it says here.
It'll be a general obligation loan and it'll be funded
Coming
through.
out of the general fund is what it's coming out of.
No, it's not coming out of the general fund. It's above it. So you have your general operating levy and then you have your debt levy. This will come out of the debt levy. So it's above, it's up, it's above that, general obligation levy.
Yeah, he emphasized on that numerous times that it won't come out of our.
Yeah, we don't need to pull this out of our 2024 budget, general fund budget. Because then it just would simply not work. I mean, we were pulling $4,000 in sidewalks out just to make a balanced budget. I mean, that's where we're at. And I mean, anybody that's been here for a little while has recognized that we need to find a different direction that we can fund some of these projects to get stuff done in the city. Referendums have been discussed, through the years, all kinds of different things. I mean, there's only so many opportunities or options that we have to get money in. And this presentation from Baird with the levy, to me and the finance committee, seems like the most logical route. Michelle.
What I am really hoping is that we could have the CIP in place before we get the money. I think that, to follow up on what Robin said, the real risk is not having a plan for this money. And also, I'd like to not borrow prematurely before we have a plan in place. But I think the risk really is not having that plan. And I'm hoping that what we'll be talking about next would be, I wish Adam were here because he could indicate if that CIP would be in place by September.
Heath, what is your thought on timeline? I mean, we do want to have a plan. We don't want to just all of a sudden have money come into the checkbook and it's like,
And why? Because we can't
And
spend it until we have. a
it
plan.
isn't just gonna go for operations.
No, they can't.
Can't,
You can't spend it until you have that plan in place.
correct.
But I'd also like to have a plan in place before we, ideally, you don't want to borrow prematurely because then you're paying interest. And so what is the, kind of what's the timeline?
Borrowing it.
If we hired them.
We're not borrowing it until we have the plan anyway.
Well, if according to this, we'll have the money in September.
Right, so there's a process to get this money.
Right.
So, tonight, well. If you guys approve this, they're gonna move forward with the sale. And then they'll bring back the sale resolution for the July 10th meeting. You guys,
They get bids on the bond.
Right,
right,
and then that's when we'll know the interest.
Yes,
and We'll have some
Correct.
specific answers for that.
and then August 14th is when you will award that bid.
and the process of acquiring the money and doing the CIP, I think are gonna go in tandem
I'd
and
just, I'd
it's
like
just
to
gonna,
be assured of that.
we're just not going to not have a plan, right? And have the money.
What is the date when we make the decision? Yes, we're locked into this. Is it the
Once we get
14th or August
once we get the
14th?
sale of the bonds back from Baird,
Is it the
and you
July
say, here's the
10th or
interest
the
rate, I mean, if,
So the
Yeah.
August 14th, so what I'm hearing is people wish to have that list of priority projects by August 14th. That's what I'm hearing.
And the full CIP doesn't have to be completed, but at
At
least.
least the high priority ones.
Right, right.
Top.
Nathan,
Well, that list was, he said we could create that internally and the council would actually be the ones that would speculate the list and rank and prioritize them. As in the other CIP, if everything went smooth, this was starting in May, which we're obviously a bit behind. He referenced October as a plan in place after final council approval, so if it can be fast tracked and make up that month, we could probably hold October. But again, that'll be in the next line item as well, so that can also go hand in hand on creating CIP for the master plan and for this plan.
and they're gonna be that close, right? I mean, if we're a month later that we're ratifying the CIP. And we just got the money, 3 weeks earlier, I don't think that's a big deal. We just don't wanna make it where it's a huge
Huge
gap.
Yeah. But Nate, would you by any chance have some idea of what projects you'd like done?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Department heads will have a list, don't worry.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, there's, and let's not forget, this is our first bond that we're looking at securing. And the projects that we have currently right now, to complete them, we don't have the match.
Think that if we decide to go forward with $1 million and we don't have a plan, it's gonna be pretty tough when we're talking to our constituents that. Okay, you just signed up for $1 million. What have you approved to do with $1 million? And if we can't say that. That's not something that I would listen to. So I have no problem with the timeline, but we need to
But we do,
prioritize our work so that we do get that list together and we're all locked up.
The exciting thing is the next thing on the agenda talks about how we're going to put together so I kind of wish it were flip flop.
Well, it's kind of like I said to some of you, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you're not gonna borrow money if you don't have the project, and you're not gonna go forward with the project if you don't have the money. But I think the timeline that we're looking at here, he's in regards to getting a CIP together, that the council. The department heads bring forward all of their ideas and the council prioritizes them on a timeline. What do you think we're looking at for getting that done
Well, I think,
realistically?
I think we probably could have it in place by October at least to get you through the first year.
I mean, does that make sense?
It does, but I guess I'm just a little bit confused yet as to how street improvements do not come out of general obligation because they do now.
say that again?
Street improvements come out of general obligation right now. Street improvements come out of general obligation, don't they?
But any street improvements,
That's general obligation. I'm just wondering,
you're,
it said street improvements here. I'm wondering how we're doing that without street improvements coming out of general obligation.
Right now, they're
When they
coming out.
come right out right now, don't they?
They are coming out, but we're not budgeting.
yeah,
No.
budgeting street improvements.
I understand that, but they would be if we did.
Well, yeah. You were not talking, this funding would not be going toward utility stuff. It would be stuff that's not covered by separate funds, separate enterprise funds.
So it'd be your road base, it'd be your curb and gutter, sidewalks, you know.
Stormwater improvements.
Stormwater,
Yeah.
your, bituminous, surface.
Pretty much everything except for water, sewer, and marina.
Correct.
Does that clarify it a little bit, John, or?
Yeah, yes and no. We still get some reservations, but
Well, again, the timeline is going to be moving forward. We're gonna get, assuming we get through 8C next, we're putting together the creation of the new capital improvement plan. And going forward and putting this out, for, issuance of the bond, or promissory note, I'm sorry. That's where we're at.
So do we need to make a motion on?
We will. So I'm gonna be seeking a motion for the council to authorize $1 million in general obligation promissory note to fund capital improvements. And essentially what that's going to do, if we're gonna put into the motion on what was it, the bids?
Which isn't gonna be tied to the.
Because we're making a resolution on this, correct?
No, tonight you will do a resolution when it comes.
With the bond,
We're doing a set sale.
yeah,
You're just approving right now to move
we'll
forward.
move forward with it,
With the timeline.
with the timeline in the
Yep.
packet, yes. So that's the motion I'd be looking for at this time.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll. I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just gonna reiterate something that when we talked about the business plan and what he had in mind going forward. The group that is not here. I mean, I think, what was his name? Andy?
And yeah.
And he made it sound to me like Adam said,
Yes.
Adam, that had to be done and that's like going out and getting a loan, just in an example. You have to have a business plan. So his part of bringing that together and saying, this is what you need to put together. This is your business plan, and not just short-sightedness to the million, but going forward on the long term. And his goal was to give us a big broader picture of what our goals should be and where we're going to go from there. And I thought that was huge.
And that,
That's a big thing.
and that the CIP would lead to like a financial management plan for the city.
It would. I mean,
Which
going
would be
forward, then,
great.
with full transparency.
Nate, what was our portion gonna be on Dodge Street? Do you remember that? If we went through with Dodge
Just
Street.
what we have from the Elder program.
Yeah.
Or the whole thing.
What would the city's portion be?
We're awarded 400,000, so we have to spend 800 to get our 400,000 back. We have to match 50%.
Okay,
That's the bare minimum. So that doesn't necessarily cover the entire, any probable cost that was presented.
it doesn't include the entire project.
No, that 800,000 total that we'd spend would not cover the entire roadway side of the project.
Do we
That's
know?
just to utilize the grant money that we were awarded.
Sure. And how much was the total project? Was it like 3.2 million or
So
something?
3.6 was with water, sewers, storm, road base.
So we would have to come up with,
Well, the water utility would be on principal forgiveness from the safe drinking water.
Okay.
The sewer utility would get principal forgiveness from the clean water fund. There were some homeowner shared items in there, like their private sewer laterals and et cetera, that were taken in, were in that bid as well.
Yep.
So you can shave some money off of there, the $400,000. And then the other one, which we wouldn't know until we applied, would be is if the design portion would be covered under the principal forgiveness as well. If it is, that would shave off another couple, 100,000 or so, probably all together. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, with everything, best case scenario, would probably be around that 1.8, like extremely best case, but I'd say probably 2 to 2.1 would be what we had to really go,
so we would, if we went through with Dodge Street, would it probably end up borrowing another $1 million?
Well, it'd be 3 different utilities as well. Your water and sewer would not get to utilize this funding because they're a fund. But as in the general fund, I mean, and that'd be up to your decision if this is something, and we still have to decide on Dodge Street too, how far do we wanna go with it, just because this is the opinion of probable cost of the stuff. For the water sewer, it makes a little difference. For the streets, it's relatively irrelevant because 400,000 is what our top kickback is.
It's supposedly more funds are on their way for roads. We've heard multiple times. Just saying.
I'll keep believing in it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Janita Zimmerman. Aye. Robin Nelson.
Aye.
Jeff Conley.
Aye.
Eric Wiznicki.
Aye.
Kathy Brown.
Aye.
John Blaha.
No,
James Brewster.
Aye.
Wendy Shelton.
Motion carried. 8C, recommendation from finance to hire Robert W. Baird and Company to facilitate the creation of a capital improvement plan not to exceed $7,500. So as we've been talking about the capital improvements, this is the plan that we're looking to do and implement.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion?
Yes. We didn't establish is where would the funds be coming from?
Any recommendations on that?
The $7,500 for the fee.
Um,
That will detail. ARPA funds.
Probably could use the RPMs.
No thanks to you. ARPA funds? ARPA funds again? Do we want to add that in the motion?
Your motion, you can, if you want to spell that out, you can.
Make it clearer. Sure.
Okay.
I'd like to amend my motion to include the fact that $7,500 is coming out of the ARPA funds,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed 7,500.
You okay with that? All right, any further discussion?
Good question.
Yep, go ahead.
What committee will this fall in?
For the creation of the capital improvement plan?
Yeah, to manage, I assume that it'll be reviewed before coming to council, how, who, and where.
I would guess it would kind of come under the purview of a few different,
Yeah.
public works and finance and.
Yeah, I think the appropriate committees are gonna work with the appropriate department heads.
Probably not personnel.
Yeah, not personnel.
Yeah,
The other one.
to make the recommendation of council
Yeah,
Is it?
That'd be to be.
for their
determined, right?
CIP.
I think it kind of depends on the project, but I would think that it'd be a collaborative effort, probably.
I mean, I'm not foreseeing this going into 10 different baskets.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering how.
You know what I mean?
Is one of the
It's just
committees
not-
gonna manage it, or is it gonna be just going to council? Because we have public property, we have works, and we have finance, all with kind of
I think we'll put it towards the committees of public works with whatever we're gonna be doing with the streets and the other department heads that, you know, whatever. I know we don't need a new squad car, so fortunately we're okay over there. So I'm thinking finance and public works is essentially gonna be the two that we're gonna be dealing with. Does that sound good to everyone? And full council for anything that would get slipped, anything else, so,
Any actual funding.
yeah. And obviously it'll all be approved as a plan by the full body, so. All right, if there's no further discussion, please call a roll.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Conley.
Aye.
Wiznicki.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Blaha.
yes,
Brewster.
Aye.
Shelton.
Motion carried. 8D, adopt a resolution acknowledging review of the 2022 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report, CMAR, and directing the city public works superintendent to submit the report to the Wisconsin DNR. Now, I'm sure everyone like myself read every item on there,
I just read the.
but I did
grades.
read the big ones,
I read
straight
the
A's. 4.0. So is there anything you'd like to put around that? That's a typical report that the council acknowledges and gets.
Something that was better report.
Yeah.
Regularly, it goes over all the plants operating, what we need to improve on, which is Josh is doing, it's been doing a fantastic.
You guys
job
are
down
doing a
there.
fantastic job down there.
The only thing that works orders is which everybody knows is bringing on and training more operators and things on to the public, sorry, the personnel.
Nate, do you know, like, do most municipalities get straight A's on this, or do they?
Some of them, some areas the DNR is kind of lenient on, so like your future training, as long as you say like, hey, we
Yeah.
have this person going,
Okay.
taking this test, they give you leniency, but the rest of that, like your phosphorus, that's a little more stringent, so Josh is. He's been a
On
fantastic.
behalf of the council, please say, like, I'm impressed anyway.
And that's the other thing I want to clarify, I won't be submitting them, Josh will be, because we're operating.
Operator.
But yeah, so Josh. has been doing it.
Yeah, well done to the guys. It's great to see a perfect report like that. So,
I would make a motion to.
all right. Was that Janita?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 8E, adopt a resolution imposing conditions and restrictions for a certified survey map for 1315 Ellis Street, parcel number 241-00070-0920, Colleen Bolts and Morgan Bolts, owners and applicants.
Yeah, the plan commission reviewed this at their meeting last month. We ran into a little bit of a snafu with the zoning board. They didn't have enough votes under the zoning code in order to do anything. So we had to reschedule the public hearing. It originally had been targeted to go through zoning board, then plan commission, then council, but because of the snafu with zoning board, it was suggested or requested if it was possible to go backwards. And staff doesn't have a problem with that. What we've done is we've attached a condition, which is number 3 in the attached resolution, which basically makes this approval contingent. So if the zoning board doesn't approve the variances that are required for this, then your approval is moot. You're just applying a preliminary approval pending zoning board authorization of the variances. So I don't see as there's any issue with that because staff is comfortable with that sort of idea. And as I say, if the zoning board decides to say no to the variances, then the CSM can't get approved anyway, can't get signed and recorded, so.
So you want a motion to
A motion to approve
resolution?
resolution imposing the conditions and restriction for a certified survey map for 1315 Ellis Street
I
as
won't
as
make
presented.
contingent.
What?
Contingent
Contingent
on the approval.
on the approval of the zoning board.
What location is this? I'm having a hard time with that address.
It's next to 1317.
It's on Ellis.
Good one.
Do you know where Lorraine's was? Was it Lorraine's? What was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the white building.
Two houses east of there. It's a mustard colored house.
The back garage comes over on High Street by.
Is it Boltz's dad, parents' house? That was there?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're gonna make that motion contingent on the zoning board approval? Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'm not real sure about that.
Any further discussion?
Yes. Danny, what is their intention? Is it just for the garage?
Right.
Okay,
Straight split. So as it sits today, if you were to go back on 1315 down High Street, as you see it is what would exist. Essentially, Morgan and Colleen would move the fence along the power pole that run through that backyard now.
so they wouldn't wanna.
No, there is no sewer and water that runs down High Street. You have access through there. Willie could probably fill you in more details on the High Street portion of it, but you have access via that lot off of High Street.
Okay.
Versus just 1350 Ellis. If it was just a garage in the backyard, it is what it is, but it was
Okay,
put on the back portion of that lot. And if you look at the county map, the CSN, or not, I shouldn't say the CSN, GIS, it essentially shows as a double lot. There's a couple double lots back there as far as the length is concerned. The issue and the variance that will be going forward with the zoning board is the road frontage. And correct me if I'm wrong, he at 26, he's 30, and the lot size width at 75 versus 80, which is in the adoption of the ordinance. So, however,
Those are pre-existing conditions that they just need to clear in order for them to be able to do this.
but no fault to the owners of the property. That's just size of the lot. That's just
Right.
hasn't been.
right, so, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? Willard, it's next to your property. I'll let you say something on this special occasion.
Well, this property was divided that way previously. There's David Olson buying the property and buying it from the lady up in front, which Glenn owns now. My neighbor in back of me. He didn't leave now. So this lot is just. He added a 50 feet and put his garage on it, and he's able to do that. So I don't see any problem with it.
All right, thank you. So if there is no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve that resolution with the restriction.
We already have one.
I mean, we have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for that. 8F, approve change order number 1 for 2023 CDBG blight control project to Peters Construction for an additional $61,560. And I think, Nathan, this is regarding that extra slab of concrete and whatnot.
Actually, I have commentary from Brandon.
Oh, perfect. If you read that.
Sorry, he's out of town on another project. The majority of the cost of the change orders for 1,100 feet of additional turbidity barrier, that's barrier $55,000 worth. That the original design was to put turbidity barrier along the east side of the contaminated soils located. That was the plan was originally approved by DNR, but had subsequent reviews of the waterway permit. They then required them to extend that around the rest of Fisherman's Point. So as per the permit, required additional scheduling changes, which added additional costs to the contractor in order to take a break and then come back after June 15th to start working on it again. Which also triggered a 28-day extension of the contractor. And the remaining $3,735, which is what the leverage was left, as a combination of quantity adjustments. And for the contractor, remove the retaining wall on Ellis Street and isolating an existing water service at Fisherman's Point, which were not originally part of their contract. So that's where most of this bulk is coming from, is they had to change some of the plan out because of DNR changes after the fact. As part of the waterway permit approval. This is all going to be paid for by the CDBG.
And regarding where we're currently at with the grant and expenses still to be incurred, we're within that budget.
Still within that budget.
Because if I recall, we were ahead a little bit.
We were ahead by, yeah,
Meaning savings.
yeah, we'll still be under that budget by a decent margin yet.
Okay. I'm gonna need a motion then to approve the change order number 1 for $61,500 for Peters Construction.
I'll make a motion.
We'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Zimmerman. Aye. Nelson. Aye. Conley.
Aye.
Woznicki.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Baha.
Yes.
Brewster.
Aye.
Sheldon.
Motion carried. 8G, approve hiring of Bailey Konjerski for part-time seasonal at the marina.
I guess I'll take that, or do you
Okay.
want that, Heath?
I don't have any.
Come on, Joanne, we haven't heard from you in a while.
So anyway, Augie was looking to hire, part-time seasonal down at the marina. And, he had 2 applicants and one of them happened to be his daughter. So according to the employee handbook, he has to, it goes to council for approval. And it's allowed in our handbook, because it's a seasonal employee. It has to be approved.
We know how long she's intending on, what,
It's just for the summer.
what's the duration? So it would just be through September, October.
Or back to school, whatever, I
Yeah,
guess, yeah.
it's, yeah, probably September.
I would suggest, it's hard to get help. You know, I mean, I don't know if,
But last year we didn't have any extra help other than the 2 guys that help Augie out.
Yeah.
I'm just. throwing it out.
it's within his budget, right? There, it's all within his budget.
So with it being his daughter, is there anybody else that's gonna oversee?
Nathan, ultimately.
Nathan, yeah.
Does this contradict like any other practices we were hired with family members with?
It's been done before, but the reason why it comes to council is because department head can't hire one of their own. It has to be done by council.
And full, you know, like if they were a full-time employee, it wouldn't happen at all. It wouldn't, it's not allowed in our handbook.
Part-time seasonal.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Awesome. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
So I do have a question. So if we're technically hiring her, right?
Yes,
We are approving the hiring.
yes.
Okay. It just seems like if we're hiring her, it'd be nice to, talk to her.
You're approving the hire that's being presented, right? Because we're not a part of that hiring process. It's just this,
Okay.
There's a lot we need to
yeah.
meet that are hired.
So if there is no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. 8H, recommendation from Public Works Committee to close Main Street, Harrison Street and Ellis Street, east of Highway 42 for Kewaunee Car Show on July 8th from 8 AM to 5 PM.
I'll make a recommendation.
Brewster, any further discussion on that?
for that one.
This is something we've always done.
Yeah, I agree.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That one brings a lot of people to town too, so.
8I, recommendation to approve a proposal from Vizu Sewer to install approximately 185 feet of sewer main repair in the amount of $19,750.
I'll make a motion.
What was the second, Janina?
Me, no, Robin.
Robin.
Question.
Okay.
Nate, can you remind me where this is going?
This manhole starts directly outside the east side of the gallery
Okay,
and goes just past Novak Insurance.
okay,
The reason we didn't do an actual full pipe replacement, sections or portions of this pipe actually run right near or under existing foundations. So the pipe's not necessarily in the word shape, there are separated, some separated joints, but it's just get this thing done before that paving happens, so we're done with it.
yeah, no, I just had to be reminded where it would, the location was, so thank you.
Michelle,
This is coming out of the sewer fund?
Yes.
And,
any further discussion?
Main,
Please call the roll.
is that Main Street?
Zimmerman,
Aye.
Nelson. Aye. Conley.
Aye.
Wiznicki.
Aye.
Brown. Baha.
Yes.
Brewster.
All right.
Shelton.
Motion carried.
42, yes.
8J, recommendation from finance to separate fire and ambulance funds into their own accounts for better tracking and transparency.
I will make a motion to
I'll
approve.
second it.
Street.
I got it.
Has the street.
So there was a meeting with the ambulance and fire department directors regarding with the townships and our partnership with those emergency services. And they had requested, the towns had requested that these funds be placed into separate accounts just for better tracking, accountability. And that after talking with staff, that didn't sound like anything that we couldn't put together. So we're gonna separate those out. Just to make sure that everyone's clear and where the money is at and as the money is growing and expenditures are being made. So that's the history behind that. So we have a motion and a second.
Question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Are we gonna do this at the end of the fiscal year or during?
This will be a monthly report generated. Correct? That's what they were asking for. Like if there's a deposit made.
Well, they want bank statements so they can
Yeah.
get that. We just have to request those.
Right.
But this is like something that they want separated. So he's asking if we're gonna do this now or if we're doing it at like the end of. the
Oh, I
fiscal
see.
year.
Yeah. I would say at the earliest convenience or what do you know, I mean,
Is it easy to do?
Yeah, it's not hard. I just gotta make sure I know exactly what belongs to what.
I got ahead of myself in regarding the reporting, though. They also are looking for like a monthly report. So when we're doing staff reports that the ambulance department and the fire department, they're submitting that to the packet already. So it wouldn't take anything for them to submit that to the towns, just so they know what's going on, how many calls and, you know, that sort of thing.
And a little of that is not all of the townships utilize our fire.
Carlton.
So they want that separated so that they can understand that they're not paying or contributing into a fund that they shouldn't be. That was a big thing.
So I felt it was a good dialogue.
Oh, I did
mean,
too.
we're Partners
Yeah,
in the
it
thing, so.
doesn't hurt.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 8K, recommendation from finance to move forward with expanding the TID 3 boundary. So. Is that boundary rating? Was this that or we just have it spelled out?
It's just,
Okay,
we don't have a map.
okay, we don't have it on that.
Are you looking for the definition of what we talked about the other night?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna be looking for in ultimately in the motion. You have that in the minutes there?
Yeah.
Would you please read that for the
I
council?
can. Motion made by Jeff Conley to make recommendation to council to extend TID 3 boundaries to be east of 42, south of Kewaunee Fabrication, include Hathaway Landing.
Okay, so we would then be capturing basically everything from south of Kewaunee Fabrication, that would be Yacht Works, Fisherman's Point, Hathaway Drive, not the city marina, because that's not a thing, but there's gonna be a lot of new money injected into that area that for sure already is being and will be in the future. So I just felt it would be good to come from finance to make that recommendation to expand that TID boundary to capture some of that new revenue. So that's why it's here.
We're fairly confident that the other taxing districts will be okay with
In
this.
agreement. Now, what that means is that whole process of creating a TID essentially is starting over with the hearings and that sort of thing with the taxing jurisdiction. So this will be authorizing staff to go forward with that creation. So do I have a motion for that?
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 9, consent agenda. Items within the consent agenda can be considered individually if the council chooses to do so. However, I will be asking for a motion to approve all items on item 9 as submitted.
I'll move.
I have a motion. Is there a motion by Blaha? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Question.
Nelson, or is that?
Yeah, Brown.
That'd be Brown.
But you.
Noted. Second. Who had a question?
So under the campground permit, does Harbor Express, they do not need a campground permit since they have camping?
From what I understood, they were not gonna be doing that anymore.
Okay,
They have, no, theirs is here. There's 202 Milwaukee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
It's Kewaunee Business Development.
That threw me off too, because who is that? But yes, they are getting one.
okay.
Yes. Is there any other question or discussion?
And we're good on our liquor licenses and all that
Yes.
kind of stuff. Okay, we have got the right number and.
Yeah. Yep. So any other discussion?
No, we don't. I mean, if you want one, we can. but-
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 10, announcements. Robin, what you got for us?
We had the Door County Lighthouse Festival this weekend and we had a really pretty good turnout, even in spite of the bad weather on Sunday. We had people come out there from Milwaukee, Cedarburg. It was crazy. I couldn't believe the amount of people. But along with that, we have Tom Seward and Betsy Seward from Algoma wrote this book about the Kewaunee Lighthouse and Harbor. It's really kind of cool. It's a little booklet and they're on sale at the little bookstore. And the Lighthouse Committee has them for sale. So it's pretty exciting. $15 if you're interested.
All right. Does anyone else have any announcements? Your motion to adjourn, all those in favor?
Whoa.
Oh,
I think we have one more.
we have a motion to adjourn. Are you seconding it, Wendy?
That
Oh,
was under the. consent.
Adjourn.
financial reports?
It was under consent.
It was a consent.
That is great.
What time?
1829.
1929. Okay.
Okay. I brought Sean down.
Okay, so I would be more interesting. 7:30.
Yeah.
Won't happen again.
There.
Another question.